Yo, what's poppin', everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Chronicle. I'm your boy, Adam Taylor. This is my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Billy Calabrese, and we're here to talk Baylor Scheierman and some injury concerns with Kristaps and Jrue Holiday right here, right now on the Celtics Chronicle. So the game on Thursday, I had to think, then I nearly lost track of days, was against Philly, and it was literally everybody was out, right? The Philly had a bunch of injuries, Boston had a bunch of guys sitting. And the good thing about that is you got to see other players step up. You got to see Drew Peterson was in the starting lineup. Nemi got some playing time. Baylor Scheierman played off the bench. And for Scheierman, I think that he came in, especially for me, I was really high on him. I did a full scouting report on him before the season. I'm going to link that actually in the comments on the YouTube channel. Make sure to follow through, hit that sign up. It's free to read. But he hasn't really played great to begin the season. I thought this was his best game as a Celtic so far. He looked great in terms of defense, solid in decision making. And we got a glimpse of his playmaking as well. And I think that's one of the more underrated aspects of his skill set. So, Billy, I want to throw it to you, man. I don't know how much Baylor film you watched after he got drafted or whether you went and saw him at Summer League. I know you're out there in Vegas, but definitely want your opinion on this.
Yeah, so the thing with Baylor, I'm going to go a little Game of Thrones on everybody. We've always had this thing with the prince who was promised. We were always promised this shooter in the draft that was going to change everything for the bench. That started with Aaron Nesmith. We had some R.J. Hunter. We had some Carson Edwards. We just had these guys that are going to come in and just bring instant shooting off the bench, and it never really worked out. Hauser is a developmental story. I'm not counting the Hausers or the Pritchards, but I'm just talking about a guy that's going to come in and just light it up. And the difference between a Scheierman and like even a Sam Hauser is I compare Baylor more to a Mike Miller, somebody that could do it on the move. He's not just a catch and shoot guy. And you saw it the first play of the game where he got the ball. He does a nice little up fake. He gets a nice move to the basket and gets a layup. That's not a Sam Hauser move. Well, it's not a year one Sam Hauser move. Sam can kind of do a little more of that stuff now. But this is, like I said, this is the difference between a catch and shoot shooter and a shooter that can go on the move. That's why I love my Mike Miller comp. I don't know how you feel about that.
That's actually a comp I hadn't considered. I think that's a good comp. I will say I think he's got more playmaking chops. I think that there's more point forward to him than Mike Miller in his prime. Well, not in his prime, but like a lot of Mike Miller was a shooting threat, right? Whereas I think Baylor can do a bit more off the bounce. He can run the pick and roll. He can create for others as well as himself. And we saw a bit of that. I think they ran an ATO for him at one point. He come off a stagger screen and then Fan made the right read off the bounce. I like what you're saying in terms of he's not just a catch and shoot guy. He can score off the dribble, can curl over screens and hit them that way. And I think Sam's a great movement shooter. I just don't think he's a great pull-up shooter. And look, if you look around the NBA, everybody's numbers dip once you start looking at pull-up, which is off the bounce, because it's a more difficult shot. And as you increase the degree of difficulty, the success rate obviously starts to come down in comparison. I do like Baylor. I think that defensively he's going to be good. I'm not saying he's going to be a starter at any point in his career, but I think he could definitely, not this year, maybe not next year, maybe next year, definitely start trying to crack that rotation, put some pressure on Hauser in it. Worst case scenario, he's in insurance for me. I think this has been Sam's most disappointing season as a pro so far. And I think that having somebody like Baylor on the bench that can come in and give you minutes, and once he's more confident shooting at NBA range, can kind of put a bit of pressure on Hauser to be more consistent. I'm a big fan of what he brings, and I just thought that even though the Sixers were technically, air quote, lesser competition in this game because they were missing so many guys, you can only beat what's in front of you, and I thought he played really well.
Yeah, this is the first time I saw the vision with Baylor because obviously he was awesome in college. He's been really good in Maine, but it just felt like one of those guys that, hey, maybe this might not translate to the big leagues, but this is the first time I'm like, oh, this guy belongs. Now, he belongs against, this decimated Philly team, but for a rookie, I'll take that all day, every day.
Yeah, because the difference between a decimated Philly team and the G League is still quite high. And this is where I always say, like, G League success doesn't equate to NBA success. Summer League success definitely doesn't equate to NBA success. So when you see a guy come into the NBA and he struggles, I try to give them at least a year before I start even wondering what their future looks like. The rule of thumb for a rookie is year 3. If you haven't taken the jump by year 3, then you're probably not going to take it. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. Some guys take a jump in year 4. Some guys take a jump in year 2. But by that third year, we should know what trajectory you're on, how your attitude to improvement is, how you're responding to the increased level of competition. I think that we've seen quite drastic improvements from Scheierman from that first game he played in a Celtics uniform to what we saw against Philly. More confident with the ball. He's more confident coming over screens. That shot still needs some work. I wouldn't be surprised if he reworks his mechanics or at least his shooting stance during the offseason. Maybe working with some skills trainers, building on that. I'm looking at you, Drew Hanlon. But other than that, I think that we've seen some decent growth. He's reading defense better. He was quite good defensively in this game, just knowing where to be, understanding how to play the lanes, getting suffocating, getting his body into guys. There's an upside there for me. And, he's a late first round pick. So expectations have to be low. He's in a really tough spot in Boston because it's not like they have developmental minutes to give away anyway. They're trying to win now. You don't develop talent when you're trying to win. But Maine have proven very good for building guys into the Celtics system over time. I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing more next season.
What I really like that I saw is obviously he's by any means not a good defender, but he's an active defender, and he tries to take charges. He tries to make the hustle plays. There's effort there, and I could work with effort. The other stuff we could teach and comes with time, but I could take effort, and that's what he's been given so far on both ends of the court. And that's something that really impressed me, like when he took that charge.
I mean, defense is 90% effort and IQ. Now, I'd say 60% effort and IQ, 20 to 30% physical attributes, and then that 10% is just like your intangibles, right? If you're an effort defender and you really try hard on every possession and you have a little bit of defensive IQ, you're a plus defender in the NBA, because everybody in the NBA is an athlete. You're an NBA level athlete or you're not there. Now, when I say I think he played well, I think he rotated well. I think he communicated well. I think that he was closing down space intelligently. When he pushed up on guys, he wasn't risking getting spun off of, or he wasn't risking getting cooked on step backs. It was intelligent. He knew when to shade guys weak. He knew when to play the passing lane. And that's IQ. And, people tell you all the time, you can't teach IQ. So I do like him as a defensive guy. I don't think he's going to be a starter at any point, but a two-way ball handler coming off the bench that can get hot now and again, I think you can trust him there.
No, when the cap crunch comes, that's going to be a guy on a cheap contract that you have in that 7th, 8th, 9th man spot that you could put in a game and he can win you a couple regular season games. That's all we're really asking for here. And obviously he's still a ways away, but I could see the vision now that I didn't see maybe 2-3 months ago.
Exactly. And I think that, the cap crunch is really important. And I think another point to point out is he was a first round pick. So he's not a two-way guy. He has spent time with Maine, most of his time with Maine, but he's not on a two-way contract. He is actually, in fact, on the Celtics main roster, and he's got a few years left. So if you look here, I've just pulled it up on here. He's in his first year. Next year, he's got 2.6 million. Then he's got a club team option for his third year, team option for his fourth year. Will become a restricted free agent in 2028, assuming he sticks long enough to stay around there. So that to me is impressive. I think that there's a lot of upside there, and there's not a major rush for that development to happen. And that's the downside for playing for the Celtics at the moment is there's very limited opportunities available. The upside is you don't need to rush your development. You can take a year or two to become the guy you're meant to become because they don't need you right away. But when that cap crunch, that's a tongue twister right there, does come, you can feel confident that he's going to step up.
Yeah, that's my thing with it. We're really patient with development. We see something in a guy, we'll have patience with them. If we don't like him, we get rid of him pretty quick. We saw that with Springer. We saw that with Bull. We saw that with a lot of guys. Watson, when we don't like somebody, we get rid of him pretty quick. So they obviously really want to invest in this guy. I love that he's team controlled. A lot of team options on there. You can extend him any summer you want and be, with his bird rights. So all the cards are in our favor with him.
That leads us to the next point, right? So another reason why you need this type of insurance, young insurance that can continue to develop their cost control. Yes, we can talk about the cap. Yes, there's you lost Svi Mikhailuk, so Scheierman comes in and kind of fills that role a little bit. You just need him to shoot a little bit better than what he is right now. But also because there's some injury concerns, longevity concerns with a couple of the guys on the rotation. So if anyone follows me on Twitter, or X, if you decided to go along with what Elon wanted to call it. You'll know I put out a post, we'll call it, instead of a tweet. I put out a post yesterday where I was basically pointing out Kristaps Porziņģis injury history with the team. So I'm just going to put that on screen real quick once I find it on my tweet. So I'm just going to put this on screen because I think it's important to share, just so if you didn't see, at least you will see it. I was going to read it out as well. So yesterday, I posted this yesterday. So yesterday's game was the 68th game that Porzingis had missed since the start of the 2023-2024 season. From there, I'm just going to read the rest of it out. That means Porzingis has missed 41% of the Celtics' total games since joining the franchise, which is 68 of 164. There's concerns with Porzingis there, and I think that's fair to have those concerns just because of the fact that, you know, he's missed games his entire career. He's not always going to be healthy for you, and that's fine until Al Horford retires. It's the same with Jrue Holiday. Jrue Holiday has been missing a lot of games recently, and that's got to be a concern because, as you can see, I'm still getting used to using StreamYard again. There's still a concern with Jrue Holiday because he's getting older. What is he, 34, 35 now? He's starting to really show signs of injuries, banged up on the shoulder. He's had some shoulder impingements. Now he's got the mallet finger. People like Scheierman are going to help you when these guys inevitably need to sit. More so Jrue Holiday in this instance because you're not going to have Scheierman to play the 5.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of had a issue with the Porzingis tweet. I pushed back a little bit because you got to think about what we gave up for him. And if we're going to talk about games played, let's talk about how many games Marcus Smart has played. Like, we sold high on him at the right time, right before his body just broke down to a decrepitness. Now, I trust our training staff. I know. I'm sorry, Marcus. I love you. Love and trust. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. We'll always have those years. But, yeah. My pushback was, like I said, this is how we got Porzingis. We already knew what we were in for. What we got to do is evaluate what do we think for the next couple years. If we do have to sell high, or it just means we get to re-sign him at a cheaper cost of somebody that has his peak would have. Like, it's kind of insane to really criticize a guy saying, oh, he's always hurt. It's like, yeah, we need that. Why do you think we got him so cheap? And we also got a first-round pick for him.
I will point out that part of Smart not playing last year was Memphis just shut everybody down. He could have been healthy at some point in that season if he needed to be, but Memphis was like, yo, everybody's injured or suspended. We're just going to shut this shit down and try again. So there is that pushback you can have there. I also think that that's fair to say that, yo, Marcus declined. And, you know, the way my stance on this entire point right now is Kristaps Porziņģis helped win the chip. So from jump, that trade was a success. I don't care what happens moving forward. Him being on the Celtics led to a championship. Jrue being on the Celtics led to a championship. Those two guys still being here means the Celtics could win a second championship. What I am saying is that in terms of injuries and longevity, there is a concern that they may not be on the floor often enough to make an impact during the regular season. And if they are, then you have concerns that they might have issues during the postseason. So that's where I'm like, well, guys like Scheierman can help because they can span some games in the regular season to try and give these guys a break. But there are, like, especially with Al getting older and no guarantees that Al Horford sticks around, I am like, yo, if the Celtics win this season or if they don't win this season, they either try and sign Porzingis to a more friendly deal or they look elsewhere because you do need someone that's going to be available all the time because Horford's just getting older and older and older and his role's going to continue to diminish until he decides to hang it up.
And my big thing is you can't judge trades in a vacuum. The Marcus Smart trade got us Porzingis, but it also got us the picks to get Jrue. So it is fitting that we put these two in the same category right now as we evaluate. But both are pretty minor things. Now, obviously, injuries, you know, when it's something minor, it could keep happening over and over again. But like a broken pinky shooting finger or finger on your shooting hand for Jrue, I'm not really sweating that. Like, I'd rather him sit out than play with it. I know you could put on a splint and you could play and do all that stuff. And then just KP with a cold or just not feeling himself, maybe being a little dehydrated. I want him to sit all those games possible. Maybe it's just I'm not a big regular season guy. I already kind of consider the regular season to be over. We're pretty much set in our seed. We're pretty much, you know, we're the defending champs. We're not proving anything in the regular season at this point.
Yeah, I think that my stance has always been and will probably always be that the regular season has value when you contextualize what that value is. So for me, the regular season is about implementing a game plan, refining that game plan throughout the year, building in those winning habits. I know that's cliche, but it's true. Understanding what actions you're going to run and the concepts that your coach is trying to implement. Like, hey, if they blitz, then we want you slipping. And that's where you get the cornet short roll. And he's evolved in that short roll over the year because that's the value of the regular season. Obviously, seeding is very important. If you can finish with home court advantage, great. If you can get home court advantage all the way through the postseason, even better. To me, that's valuable. And I don't, but I also don't subscribe that you need your guys on every single night. And this is where I think these younger cost control guys really get an opportunity to develop on a contending team like this. But what I will say is, just because you sit a guy with an injury-prone history throughout the regular season does not guarantee they're going to hold up in the playoffs. That doesn't matter. I get the idea of cause and effect, and there's less wear and tear on their body. But if they're prone to being injured and you're throwing them into the most physical style of basketball out there, they're going to get hurt anyway, or odds are there's a higher opportunity for that to happen. Look, I like both of these guys. I want them both to stick around, but finding some valuable guys that can spell minutes for them that you can trust in the postseason if it comes to it, yeah, I think that's super important.
Yeah, my thing is just they're both so unique that it's just necessarily like, what are you going to do to replace them? Like, there's no other unicorn like that's going to be like Porzingis that's going to be available even close. And then there's going to be, I mean, what other vet leader with already a championship ring that the other guys in the locker room are going to respect like Jrue Holiday? Like, I just don't think that those guys have anything that can be replaced. Like, I think those guys were essential to the run last year, obviously, even though Porzingis really was just game one of the finals. It's still one of the greatest finals performances we've ever seen. 20 points in a quarter was freaking nuts and just really just ripped out the Mavs' heart before it even started. But I do just think it's so important to have guys that fit in and do different things that really I find irreplaceable, especially Jrue on defense.
But that's the concern, right? Like, if these guys are injured, they are irreplaceable. And if you've built your team around irreplaceable talent and they disappear because they're hurt, that's when you're screwed. So the way I'm going to throw this out to you is, and look, I'm one of the biggest Celtics green teamers there is at times, but I also try and be realistic because that's my job. So let's look at it like this, right? Say Porzingis comes back from injury. We get him into the second round. He gets hurt. We don't see him again till the finals. He plays in the finals. He has one good game, but then like the rest of the time, he's dealing with injury or whatever. The Celtics, say they win, right? Now do they try and trade him as a two-time champion, knowing that they can't rely on him in the postseason? What happens if they don't win? Do they try and trade him anyway because now he's missed 2 playoff runs on the bounce, basically, with one good game in each? Like, where does the cutoff point come?
Oh, it's different conversations, win or lose. Like, you lose, anything's on the table. But if you win, and it's like we're kind of already adjusted and figured out a way to handle Porzingis being in and out, you're just going to get him cheaper down the line because obviously he's going to need an extension eventually. So, I mean, every time he misses, the cost for keeping him just gets lower and lower and lower. And I just don't think that there's going to be anybody that's even going to give you, let's say, 40% of the games he plays it's going to give you the ceiling that those 40% of games that he plays gives you. I just don't see it.
That's fair. I agree. But I do think that it's a very fair conversation to have. And the reason I'm having this conversation isn't because, look, I'm a big KP guy. You can go through my entire social media history. You can go through every article I've wrote about the dude. It's all positive. I don't have Jrue Holiday, the exact same thing. I think he's one of the best glue guys, best connectors, best on-ball defenders in the NBA. But I also see the value of selling high when you know that you've got a depreciating asset. And unfortunately, Holiday specifically coming into age 35, bunch of miles on the clock. And I get that it's multiple different injuries, but to me, that's more concerning or just as concerning because it's showing his body slowly starting to break down. At what point do you trade rather than holding on to a depreciating asset? I think that's a conversation that I'm trying to steer us towards more than being like, yo, you trade one of these guys because you need to. It's like, do you try and get back the most you can, knowing that in a year or two, then they're going to be on a net negative on their deal.
Yeah, see, that's just my issue. I think the return is always going to be, you're always going to get less back than what you give with this situation because we can't combine salaries. I mean, we have decent picks, but we have Tatum and Brown. Our first round future picks aren't going to be worth much. They're going to be 25 through 30. Like the Celtics are going to be good no matter what, as long as Brown and Tatum are on the team. So yes, we have some first round picks to trade. They're essentially just throw-ins, and we can't combine the salaries, so we can't go for a big fish. So you're trading Porzingis for maybe some young guys that maybe had some bad luck, maybe somebody that's just disgruntled. Same thing with Holiday, but like the other team has to agree too. Why is the other team taking our scraps? If we,
So for me, the argument there is maybe you trade them to somebody that thinks that that's going to put them in contention. And again, look, I'm not saying that this should happen. I'm just playing a devil's advocate here. The tweet I put out there had no opinion. It was literally just a fact-based tweet. This is how many games he's missed. This is the percentage. Now, a lot of people took that as an opinion, and it wasn't. And I clarified that during the replies, just like I'm trying to clarify it here. But I do think it's a fair conversation at the same point, because I know that the fan base is very split on a dude that's missed 4 out of 10 games.
Yeah, my issue is the fan base thinks that you could trade those 2 guys for Kevin Durant. And it's like, no, it's not going to happen. So that's where my issue is. Like, if I could trade those 2 guys for Kevin Durant or Bam Adebayo, I'm doing it in a second. But I'm sorry, guys, it's just not physically possible.
I mean, you say that, and then you could trade Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic. And that's, I'm just, I'm playing devil's advocate. That's the response you're going to get in the comments. Like, yo, if you can trade a broke down, aging Anthony Davis and get Luka Doncic, then anything's possible.
Let's make a difference between incompetence and what's allowable by the cap. Okay, there's 2 different things working here. Yes, if the Lakers were in the second apron, that trade is not going the way it went. So let's back up there. And like I said, if there's a Nico Harrison type out there that wants to just give us somebody, I just don't think Pat Riley's that guy as much as I do want Bam.
No, I think Danny Ainge might be if he decides to retire. He's like, yo, do you want Lowry marketing? Would you do that? Would you do Lowry for KP? Very similar skill sets, different sizing. Obviously, you lose a bit of height. But if that was I'm not saying it is, but I'm just throwing out. You said there's not many guys that could give you the same things back. I think Lowry would actually be one of the only guys that could.
You know what's so funny? I actually think Danny would do Lowry for Jrue and picks. It wouldn't be KP, just because he's always had like a love of Jrue Holiday, and just to give like a veteran presence to kind of start turning that team around. I think it would be more likely to be Holiday than KP, but that's neither here nor there. I don't like Laurie. I like Markkanen, don't get me wrong, but I just don't like
Lowry or Laurie?
That's a great question. I always say Laurie.
I don't know. I'll say Lowry. Who knows? I've been wrong many times, and I'll be wrong many times in the future.
Finnish, Swedish,
Finnish.
So you might know better than me on that side of the pond. So
a friend of mine moved to Finland a few years back. I might text him actually and ask him. Yeah, I mean, look, it was just a name that I threw out there where I'm like, similar skill set. Obviously, you lose some height, but it's just in terms of there's not many guys out there that can give you what KP does. Well, there's one straight away. The other one is a no-go because he's in San Antonio, and that's never going to happen.
Exactly.
With that being said, Billy, anything else you want to say to these people?
Kevin Durant, guys, let's just let it go. It was a fun dream. It was Danny Ainge's dream 10 years ago. Actually, 20 years ago. He wanted to draft him, and then we got Robert Swift in the draft because of the way the ping pong balls went. But it's just never going to happen, guys.
So he's going to say Elsa. So that's what he's saying. Be Elsa. Let that shit go. We'll be back tomorrow ahead of the Lakers game. We'll then be back on Sunday after the Lakers game. Until then, stay sassy, stay classy, and we'll catch you soon. Peace.